This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
So this is the I would normally say something funny here, but I'll just keep it to myself. Oh man, look at there. Alabama's own Lash LaRue, former WCW standout. By the way, Lash is super jacked these days. Lash looks like more like one of the Shane twins than Lash LaRue here. But yeah, you're making quick work of him, throwing him to the outside. But yeah, you look like a real life action figure. This is action figure Jeff.
Action figure Jeff.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, I'm trying to compliment you. So
Major Wrestling Pride be happy with that. That is you referring to that Major Wrestling Pride, Brian and Zach?
Well, you had plenty of free time.
Yeah,
right? It's not like you're working matches all the time, so you can. I mean, this is probably the best shape of your life. No.
Up there, you know, this is coming off of, when you think about it, the summer of no worries. I literally trained my butt off. That was to keep me sane and to give me a little justification that I'm going to go out on the lake at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I got up and went to the gym every morning and got to eat my own cooking 7 days a week for quite some time. So yes, I was in good shape and I was, you know, I've always been into training and exercising, but I had a lot of time to get ready.
Did you get on the gas for this show?
Conrad, you answer that for yourself. Take a look.
Of course.
Oh yeah. I look just like Lex Luger, don't I? I look just like a IBF or no, what was Ica Pro?
Ica Pro.
What was the
Oh, you're talking about WBF.
Yes,
Vince's failed promotion.
Like a WBF superstar, don't I?
Well, listen, if I
The
didn't
Wiggle.
Oh, seriously, my uncle's favorite wrestler. He was so excited that Norman Smiley was there.
I love Norman.
He thought the idea of getting behind a guy doing the big wiggle was the funniest thing ever. By the way, your dad would tell the Torch that you guys brought in 80 folks for this first show, but you're going to start dwindling that down. There were around 80 people brought in for the first show. The next event on July 3rd will require only about half as many people to be brought in. He said he eventually wants to focus on just over 24 wrestlers rather than nearly 4 dozen on the first show. And he says there weren't any pre-produced features on the first event because there wasn't enough in the budget to fly wrestlers in early to film. They will film footage for future features at the other tapings. If the first buy rate is strong enough, they'll even go to the on location in the future weeks. And Lodi missed his match. He was supposed to be here because he had neck surgery, which is a shame. But
and to say that we didn't fly men at extra expense, it was all about show one.
Yeah,
let's keep as much as we possibly can in the ring. That, you know, the pre-tapes, and again, to put it in context, coming off of the WCW run, there are many times in the 3 hour, even a 2 hour Nitro, that there would be 30, 40, 50 shots before, at the top of every segment and at the bottom of every segment, sometimes multiples top and bottom. So the philosophy was as much of in-ring product as we can present. You saw that we had Goldilocks and 3 or 4 you know, backstage, but tried to keep that to a bare minimum.
I want to mention we've got Apollo coming out here who was a standout down in Puerto Rico. I mean, he looks like the next big thing. It's almost like The Rock and Sonny Siaki and Scott Hall had a baby, and here's Apollo. Maybe like even an early Brian Cage vibes. I'm getting the vibe, but it just didn't work out. Why don't you think we saw more Apollo? Why didn't Apollo reach the stratosphere here in America?
Well, you know, as time went on, and he will for sure concur with this, we've had the discussion, you know, he wasn't always at the top of his game, had some demons here and there, but his verbal skills, he could not speak English very well. And so that, you know, him having long-term to the Spanish speaking audience, specifically Puerto Rico, I've seen guys over in my time, you know, the Road Warrior pop, quote unquote, Stone Cold's pop coming through the glass back in the day was just, it was mesmerizing to watch night after night. And there's others, Rock's music hit, Cena, you know, back in the day, Jerry Lawler, but Apollo coming out in when he was red hot in Puerto Rico was on that level. I mean, the people, he was just electrifying to the Puerto Rican audience. It was really cool to see and be a part of.
Now we see R-Truth in there. Ron Killings is in there. So it's 3 guys in. Buff's already been eliminated, as has Lash LaRue. We're going to have an NWA World's Champion here soon enough. I want to mention a few days prior to this, there was a big NASCAR race on the 15th. You attended, you acted as a pit crew there. They got some nice little sound bites, some PR. And you even had some of the TNA Cage girls at the Alabama Motor Speedway passing out like free tickets to come to this show. And supposedly amongst the race fans, they're most interested not in seeing Hermie or Sterling, but by God, they want to see Toby Keith. So there's something for everybody here. Not Meltzer, but Wade would also say sources say several wrestlers have contacted the office to voice their disapproval with Francine being hired. Do you remember that? Any heat about hiring Francine?
You know, when we've chatted offline about, I just can't put my finger on it, but I know that there was, look,
let me cut to it. Shane Douglas was originally considered and then not used because he drew a line in the sand that says, if she's coming, I'm not. That's the story. I've never asked Shane. I don't know. Was there heat between Shane and Francine, and that's what kept him off this first show?
There was a chatter around Francine and maybe Shane. I don't recall specifically any instance, but also that being said, people had opinions about everything. What are you doing?
Of course,
doing there? But don't specifically remember the Shane Francine issue. I'll ask you, was there an issue in WCW or in ECW with them?
I don't remember the inner workings of their relationship. I just know that it feels like the way it was positioned as we see Wolfie D out here with a new gimmick. Are you calling him Slash here?
I believe so. And first time Father James Mitchell appeared on camera, who, later on, but he was a mainstay with us, and I don't say underrated, but he's never underrated in my eyes. He's just a phenomenal talker and really
incredible TV performer as far as a character.
Yes, he could tell a story. And if you said, James, I need it in 60 seconds, he could do it. If you need it in 3 minutes, I can do it. Hey, James, don't say anything, but by the end of the match, tell your story. He could do it. He's a very gifted performer.
The NWA TNA website posted a story about Barnett signing with WWE and wished him the best of luck. Of course, that's after we've just talked about that he was supposed to be here, and then.
Well, who said he was supposed to be here? I never ever recall saying, what would Jim have done?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because your dad said he was supposed to be here. And he said, Wade said, former NWA promoter Jim Barnett was scheduled to appear. By the way, look at this shit. This is not Scott Steiner. This is a guy that you had dress up just like Scott Steiner.
I had him do that. You know what? Because this has gone on to get some, what would you call it? Urban myth, but with the Superman. And when you look at it, you go, well, there's Big Papa. Maybe not. Maybe that was an inside job between my dad and Brian Lawler, because Del Rios and Brian Lawler were best friends to the day Brian passed away. And
but clearly he's a big Papa Pump ripoff here.
I mean, yeah, that's really talking bad about the word ripoff, because I know him as Del Rios. So, but yes,
wait a minute, he's doing suplexes. He's got his hair.
For sure. And when I watched it back here at your house that night, because in the TNA studios, when I'm clipping stuff, we obviously didn't sit and editorialize about this, but at your house, I'm going, geez, that is Big Papa Pump, or whatever. I want to be Papa Pump.
Anyway, here's what Wade said. Former NWA promoter Jim Barnett was scheduled to appear at the first pay-per-view as a Mr. Magoo-like character, but pulled out after receiving a consulting contract from WWE. Although the hiring led some to believe that Vince McMahon was trying to sabotage the first pay-per-view. Yeah, like he would have cost him buys. Most people believe he was doing a good deed by hiring the aging Barnett. And I kind of agree. I mean, on the one hand, we could just villainize everything that Vince ever did. But it's not like people were going to say, well, I was going to order that pay-per-view, but now that Barnett ain't coming, fuck it, I'm out. That's not going to happen.
No. And Vince is
Look at this. Look at this.
Oh, yeah. You love it.
So what we're looking at is what is going to be one day Abyss, but he's not even known as Chris Parks here. He's got a different name, and the rumor and innuendo is you changed that name too. Tell us what we're looking at here.
Prince Justice, and who later on became Abyss. and now he's a producer in the WWE as Chris Park. But he worked on the independent scene. Chris Harris up around the Cincinnati area. Roger Ruffin trained him. He worked in that area, and he was just getting work. And this showing was the first time that Dutch Mantel had saw him and saw how he could move, and a big guy. This got Abyss his job in Puerto Rico, where he went down there. They created the character, him and Dutch. And this is really the story behind the story behind the story. This set, and me and Abyss have talked about this off and on for years. This changed the trajectory of his career, because up until this point, he's an independent guy, and he didn't, I mean, I don't really see Prince Justice in that at all. And I'm like, what is princely or kingly or royally about you? Just drop Prince and go as Justice. Well, that happened a couple of shows, and Dutch took him to Puerto Rico. And as they say, the rest is history, because Abyss came back a different guy, very talented. He's a great athlete, but he really became seasoned in his 2 years in Puerto Rico.
Here's Conan.
Listen to the pop. If you may or not be, incredible pop when Conan came out. He was a global star. Certainly a WCW run, and it goes without saying, drew 30, 40, 50,000 people a couple of times in Mexico.
By the way, the matches that we're breaking down, we mentioned that Meltzer gave the first one 3 3/4. Wade gave it 2 3/4. The little fellas, do you want to guess what Wade gave them?
Asterisk, not non-rated.
1 star, gave them 1 star. The Dicks against James Storm and Psychosis, he gave them 1 star. And then the next match, which is the Dups, that got 1.5 stars, whereas it was a dud for Meltzer. And this main event, according to Wade, is 3.5 stars. Meanwhile,
what was the NBA game last night? What'd you give that rating? That game last night? The I'm kidding, Conrad.
I'm looking to see if I can find. Oh, Meltzer gave the main event 3 stars. But I get what you're saying. You don't believe in rating matches. You think it's just, you should treat it like sports and professional athletes, which is
no.
We have little people
I
and flying Elvises.
Full disclosure on giving, it does give a reference to what did the body of a match from, whether it's Keller or Meltzer or even a fan. It's a point of discussion. It gives you some kind of barometer. That's I do like that part of it. I also like the barometer of buy rates and ratings, because I don't think to this day you can have any one exact barometer, but if you collectively combine them all together, it does give viewer feedback or promoter feedback or talent feedback. It gives you some type of measuring stick. So I'm actually not knocking. That may have come across as that I'm completely opposed. I'm just having a little fun with you. I'm not.
By the way, Joel Gertner has come out here and cut a 3-minute promo, and we've shown him the entire time, totally ignoring everything that happened in the ring. So I'm not faulting Joel for that. I'm asking, who put this match together, and why are they fucking stupid?
Oh, wow. That's a heavy opinion.
Well, I'm just saying. Wow. By the way, the fella coming out here as part of the Rainbow Express on the right, who you remember as Kwee-Wee, his name is Bruce, and it's printed in black and white in the torch that this is a rib on Bruce Pritchard, who both the Jarretts have clashed with during their WWF stints. So I asked you that in person, and you said no. And then Wade reported it as fact, which means your dad said, yep.
Gotta be. Right?
Of course. Anyway, why would you not have Joel? He needed whoever he was introducing should have been who you were going to be wrestling first. That way we didn't have to just see you standing in the ring, and he could have still got his shit in. But as it is, we got 8 guys beating the shit out of each other, but we're not going to show it. We're going to show skinny Joel Gertner singing dirty limericks.
That's why they call it sports entertainment. Sometimes we can treat it like a sport. Sometimes we can treat it like an entertainment. Sometimes we can treat it like a hybrid. If you would have had him against me, then it'd be 2 heels. So that wouldn't have got the desired reaction either. I get it. I also think we're splitting hairs a little bit, but I totally, 8 guys are in the ring and the match is ongoing. And it's like we called timeout in the play.
Well, listen, in a better, and I know we're not there production wise, but would have been fine to show the action in the big screen and show
Big screen. What budget are you on? I'm kidding. We had them.
you know what I mean, and Gertner in the little picture in a picture deal. By the way, I'm curious why you didn't promote Rick Steiner in terms of the flyers when you guys were promoting the show. It was you, Ken Shamrock, Scott Hall, and Francine.
We didn't get confirmation on Rick Steiner.
Okay.
He was there's a couple of guys. Gosh,
a hell of a bump from Abyss. I wonder he didn't break his fucking forearm.
Yeah, Abyss could work from day one. He's so athletic. But Conan too. Did we advertise Conan? There were a couple of names that, as the weeks went up, I also know that Conan and me were like, can you come on board? He's got the AAA thing. Look, we couldn't advertise the same names every show, every week moving forward. But I'm almost positive Robbie was a late addition. Rick Steiner was a late addition.
So here's what your boy, you said, I wonder what Jason Powell said. And here comes Malice.
Oh, now he's my boy. Oh, Malice. What a talent. Conrad, were you a fan of Malice?
No.
Okay.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't dislike him, but it was never like, oh shit, Malice is on. I got to watch.
I'm not saying that. The building blocks, he had all the tools.
Oh, no. I would, if I were you, he would have been on the roster 100%.
Okay. I just wondered because
but like, I don't have a Malice t-shirt in my drawer is what I mean. So, but I know you sleep under a Jason Powell blanket because you've mentioned it a few times.
Oh, we got a little red ass Conrad.
No, here we go. The main problem I had with this show was it felt too much like WCW. Everything from Mike Tenay to the corny gimmicks, to the look of the ring and set, to the corny gimmicks, to the cheap and poorly mixed music, to the corny gimmicks, to too much Jeff Jarrett, to the did I mention corny gimmicks? The idea behind the Johnsons is that Mortimer Plumtree is forcing them to wear those outfits against their will, but what excuse do the Flying Elvises have? The Cruiserweight action was indeed nonstop, but I didn't know that dressing up three talented wrestlers in matching Elvis costumes is a message any promotion should send during its very first match. And speaking of the Johnsons, I never thought I'd say this, but they should have gone with the dickhead masks after all, because that gimmick was beyond bad. Speaking of beyond bad, Ed Ferreira and Don West were awful. I'm talking Lee Marshall, Mongo McMichael awful. And just when I thought the Johnsons tag team was the lamest gimmick since the Ding Dongs, out walked the Dupps with the fingers up their noses, doing a gimmick so cartoonish that David McLean wouldn't touch it. Notes, I was starting to believe that Jeff Jarrett had packed on a few pounds, but then Lash LaRue walked out and made him look like Francine, who looked as if he hadn't eaten, or she hadn't eaten, since one of her ECW checks cleared, et cetera, et cetera. He's eating the show up, so you wanted to know, since you thought Meltzer was critical, you thought Jason Powell would carry your water. Just shitting all over him.
I did not say carry my water.
And here comes Scott Hall, cleaning house as he should. Apollo standing up top for 8 minutes and then just jumps down, forearm to the face to Malice.
A little inexperience there on Apollo in his first ever gauntlet for the gold match.
I was waiting on him to do like some flippity do there or something.
A little inexperience. Again, we're producing 4 hours of content on our first outing. And so, lots of moving parts that went, and especially laying out a gauntlet match. It's not easy.
Who did it?
Who would have? I know Scott Armstrong probably helped me organize it. I laid it out in broad strokes. Dutch would have helped. I'm sure my father would have helped. I'm not exactly sure the agents, but with 20 guys, there was a lot of us that got together on this, on the eliminations and the format, if you will, of the match layout.
Let me ask you something. Wade would write a commentary. He said, Stephanie McMahon and Brian Grewitz, take note. Jerry Jarrett successfully produced a 2-hour wrestling show without anybody having to act in an unnatural way backstage. Oh, here we go. Check it out. Here comes Toby Keith. This is a big moment. I feel like we should track it.
Oh, but he's making himself an entrance. What is he doing in there? He has no business in there. Right in the face of Jeff Jarrett. What is this? Is Toby Keith? Has Jarrett up? What is this? Toby Keith Triple suplex, Jeff Jarrett.
He has just become my favorite country western superstar.
He is the angry American. Toby Keith should be banned from this building. He should be banned from this broadcast. He has no business. Jarrett has been eliminated. Toby Keith and Hall just eliminated.
And all of our dreams came true. You weren't going to ruin another promotion by being world champion.
There you go. Made you happy, Conrad. Made that 19-year-old or 21-year-old Conrad Thompson on the ninth row just shouting for glee.
I was 20. I was about to turn 21, and I wish I could have bought a beer legally to celebrate. Anyway, the compliment was, without anybody having to act in an unnatural way backstage while cameras were present. What I mean is, he didn't have wrestlers making secret plans about covert actions in front of a freaking camera. So the idea is he likes that you're not insulting the audience's intelligence, but we got wrestling dicks. Wade gave the show a 6.5. Your boy Bruce Mitchell gave it a 6. And he says, no chairs, no walking garbage wrestling, no long-winded owners lecturing me about the business that made them, no tables or guitars or slap nuts or worksheet BS made for a great relief. This was a wrestling show, and there's not a damn thing wrong with that. So he was pretty complimentary, except Toby Keith, except for that awful song ABC rightfully rejected, did a nice job acting tough towards Jarrett, blah, blah, blah. Oh, here comes the Vampire Warrior, your boy, David Heath, Gangrel.
Love Dave.
Chat me up, though. The Toby Keith thing is what's going to get the most press out of this, right?
Yeah, and a little footnote, I was texting with a buddy of mine, JB, or Ash, over the weekend, and he brought up a fact, Conrad. This is pretty crazy, but I recalled it instantly. But on our Summer of No Worries, Jeremy recalls me laying out, because I had a friendship with Toby, and I said, look, he's red hot. How do you like me now? And all this. I said, I'm going to have him suplex me vertical. And I said, it'll be a shot that we can circulate and Monterey Peninsula artists on. Anyway, that was 6-9 months before that night happened that I called that shot. But it was by design to get publicity. 100%. I'll say the t-shirt, 100% to get publicity, because Toby was red hot. And look, we didn't know where that was going to go. Could me and Toby eventually work a one-on-one match? Toby played, semi-pro football. He worked in the oil rigs before he exploded on the scene. He's an athlete. So my hopes were maybe one day we could have a single match or keep Toby involved from the fringe. Toby's done stuff over the years with WWF, WWE, so Toby's been around, and I always look at, when I see a photo of Toby and I think to 2013, which we'll get to in my world, what if that transaction would have gone through? But back to our regular scheduled programming.
Crowbar doing his thing out here. Friend of the show. I know he's a listener. He's back, by the way. He's wrestling again.
Yep. And Chris Harris came in right before that. And who would have thought that, James Storm and Chris Harris would have gone on to be, arguably, certainly one of the top 2-3 teams, in TNA history.
America's Most Wanted, baby.
It's really cool to see Chris come out, always in good shape, and had a good run. But that was his first appearance with us.
So talk me through your experience. How'd you sleep the night before? I mean, you've got your whole life savings bet on this show.
There was so many moving parts, Conrad. And, just recently I went back and watched on Netflix, the Richard Scrushy story,
that
documentary. I was just thinking through, look, and you can relate to this, it being in business. Yes, I wanted to, at the end of the day, as Toby says, earn our fans one at a time. And the talent I wanted to put on a show, and working with my father and working with Keith Mitchell and just putting together, we'll call it the whole ball of wax. But I really, really, really wanted this to be a success for Richard. I mean, yeah, I put my money up. That's my money. But somebody else bet on me. I really wanted the show. There's Steve Carino as he's walking down the aisle, but I really wanted this show to come off and be super successful. Of course, like I said, buy rates and production and everything that goes with the obvious. But I really wanted to do the show. I wanted the show come off without a hitch, where Richard and his team at Health South could say, okay, we're the investment. We're going to get our money back and then some.
I realize this is, tomato, or maybe it's just preference. But when you got guys like Scott Hall and you got Lawler and you got Carino, these are known, established to the audience characters. And instead, they're all jammed into the main event where maybe there's too many stars to focus on any one. And so you really only have like, I don't know, a quarter of the show dedicated to the star power, which is all loaded in the main event. The rest of the card is a bunch of guys you're trying to establish and quote unquote make. In hindsight, if you had to do over again, would you have sprinkled a little more star power or established names throughout the undercard? Or did you think that this is the way it should have been? I only ask because we had a booking philosophy discussion a few weeks ago where your dad talked about you don't have a featured talent in the opening segment. You don't have a top talent in the first segment, blah, blah, blah. Is that old school wrestling? And did you think in hindsight we needed more quote unquote name talent underneath?
Can you I want to make sure I understand your question. Should we have
all right, Rick Steiner was in there for 90 seconds. Buff Bagwell was in there for 90 seconds.
Yeah.
You got former ECW world champion Steve Carino. He's here almost as a throwaway. There's a lot of recognizable talent if you're a wrestling fan, but instead we're going to invest time in James Storm, who by the way worked out. Great call, not knocking it. Flying Elvises. Again, I understand it's a different type of match. You're trying to establish the other team too. Yeah. But we got little guys. And then we had that whole tag match with the Dups and the one with the Dicks. And it just feels like to me, maybe we sprinkle a little more star power in there and throw some of these guys that we're trying to establish in this match.
I got you now. I wanted the main event to be a star-studded, no lulls, 20 guys coming out. You can't have 20 straight stars, but not really letting quote unquote the people ever like settle into the main event, sit back. I wanted to oh, there's Carino, there's this talent, there's that talent, to keep the ball rolling. I wanted to expose, obviously we've already covered that. I wanted to come out of the gate with the X division. It's an alternative. Again, it's a 2-hour commercial free starting point. I did, and I've thought about this a lot over the last month that we've gone through this journey on My World, is that first episode, I wanted to come out of the gate, and I don't want to just say just a variety show, but as strong as possible that no, we're not WCW. No, we're not ECW.
We're not just this or just that. Don't box us in. Let us be everything.
Well, create our own niche. And if you saw in the opening of this show, from the very first show, people were chanting TNA. And I thought that was cool. That was a takeaway of the night that, okay, the name and the branding of it. And again, the emotional investment. You have to have an emotional investment. The things I've learned over the last 19 years or the last 35 years, but they continue to grow every day. It's that emotional connection and investment, whether it's a heel, whether it's a babyface, or whether it's a brand. If there's not that emotional connection, you have nothing.
We see a lot of talent in the ring right now, starting to get down to the nitty gritty. We've only got about 12 minutes left in the broadcast. Just to recap, we got Shamrock in there. Oh, Carino's going out. Brian Christopher just eliminated him. King of Old School is gone. It's Scott Hall, Malice, Apollo, Brian Christopher, and Ken Shamrock. And we're going to have a new world's champion here momentarily. I wanted to ask too, a quick question about what you're feeling after the show. I mean, at this point, you're out of the match, but you're not out of the show. You're in the back, I assume, in whatever you're calling the gorilla position, watching on a monitor.
I'm getting ready for the second episode. When I went through the curtain, knowing that the following week, me and Scott are in a match, that's the thing about producing and wearing multiple hats. You never say, hey, I'm going to sit over there and sit back. I'm going to get me a water and just relax for a minute. That was an impossibility. So do you mean after this episode or at the very end of the night?
I mean, after this episode, obviously the pressure of being live with satellite time, and you don't get a second chance to make a first impression, blah, blah, blah.
I felt comfortable as each segment went along. Again, I've since I was 15, I've been around live television in Memphis, Tennessee, and know that if you have a really stinking segment, and believe me, at Memphis TV, you talk about having some stinking segments. That's That's just the nature of the beast.
So the match has changed, guys. Now it's down to the last two. It's Malice versus Ken Shamrock, and Ricky Steamboat is your referee. So Ricky's got his referee stripes on, his zebra stripes on, and he's now going to main event this singles match. And again, Father Mitchell is not only supporting Slash, but also Malice. So he's in the corner of Malice now, giving him some last minute advice. And the winner of this match, as they were the final two members of the gauntlet, is going to become the NWA World Champion. Why was Malice the right guy for Ken here?
We wanted to build up Malice and have him a future contender. And Kenny got that real quick and was actually very excited. He saw where you're going. And to rewind just a little bit, we got it down to the final four. Apollo could have been a future champion. We wanted to tell that story, knowing that we could have switched him heel and put him with a mouthpiece. And then obviously Scott Hall, lately, just recently online, I think there was a quote that I must have said or did say about Scott, why he was never a world champion. Scott had more than every tool in the toolbox to be a world champion. So when it got down to those four, but we wanted to put Kenny over Strong. James Mitchell was going to be a mouthpiece moving forward, a good alignment. But I'm going to go back to Jerry Toot, Malice. He is at this stage of his career, he just needed a little more seasoning, but he had a good look. He was going back and forth to Japan. He wanted it. He loved this business, man. God rest his soul. But he was going to be in the world title hunt for weeks to come.
Let's talk about the main event here. And as we're coming down, who's like on headsets running, I don't know anything about producing pay-per-view, but I've always been told or been under the impression you only have X number of satellite time. You only have so much time, so many minutes, and then it's done. Was there a rule of thumb going into this? I think the phrase is back timing. Who's back timing the show and making sure that you're hitting the marks if you're not doing it?
Well, Bob Ryder and my dad, both. And then at the end of the day, Keith Mitchell sits in that truck and for our 2-hour shows. And this is where it got tricky. And this is another thing in the in-demand discussions that got fascinating that, on the, it's that East Coast, West Coast right now, West Coast, that came on 5 p.m, but they had an immediate replay. Those were built into the contracts. Later, we got to a point where, that became routine, but in the negotiations and getting replays, but we had 1 hour and 58 minutes of satellite time. So that gave Master Control 2 minutes to get it ready to do the replay. So Keith Mitchell was, the buck stopped with him. Cool Hand Luke sitting in the driver's seat that would get us in and out. But as far as communicating with the referee, and I don't believe, does Ricky have an IFB in his ear? I'm not sure, but you have cameramen at ringside, you have referees calling times. We're in a position, and Kenny's season, he knew that, a time frame that he had to go.
It's just, it's interesting to look back at this and figure out all the pressure that you must have been under, especially since, as Meltzer said, the so-called full support of the cable industry turned out to be something less. After NWA TNA officials were under the impression they had a deal last week with the clearance of the Dish Network, it turned out not to be the case, leaving their potential universe in the 35 to 40 million range. The losses of most of the Canadian systems, Cablevision and Dish Network, is a major blow for a group that needs 50,000 buys per week to break even, unless they get a corporate sponsor, which they've yet to land. So it's frustrating to know that Canada, who is this big, wrestling crazed country, they aren't going to be able to see this one. But your dad would be quoted as saying that the estimate was very encouraging, that he had been in talks with the folks at In Demand. And he says, quote, he said the representatives from In Demand who were at the event told him the early reports from cable companies were that the buy rate was encouraging. Quote, overwhelming success was the language they used, but we really won't know anything until Friday. He said he still doesn't believe fewer than 50,000 will have ordered it, but if that's their break even and starting point from there. So, yeah, we're going to talk about this a lot next week. As I guess now is as good a time of any to mention The next week, the subject matter is going to be the Jay Hossman story, and we're calling it "He Lied to Us." And boy, it is an interesting story that you don't want to miss. Whew. I just can't imagine the pressure you're under, dude, knowing, well, I have all my personal net worth involved in this, and we sold less than 500 tickets, and the fucking ring broke right before we went live, and but they tell us we're getting good pay-per-view numbers, and you keep operating under that premise, and then you realize, well, that's not exactly the case. How about Steamboat adjusting Shamrock to get him in position right there? Did you see that?
Yes, I did. Ricky knows what he's doing.
But it was so subtle. He grabbed his wrist and just adjusted him just a little bit, like, hey, kid, come over here.
And, I think I've discussed it on here before, but, my father's favorite NWA world champion was Dory Funk Jr.
Yeah.
And if I had to pick one, mine would have been Ricky Steamboat. I love Flair, but Ricky, he was that babyface WrestleMania 3. And, the first 7 years of my career, I was a babyface. So seeing Ricky do this and how it went down. And, this is the first time we tried the concept. It's a Royal Rumble, but look, you can't call it a Royal Rumble. You need to have different rules. So our rule was, when it gets down to 2 in the Royal Rumble, you have a match and you slide in a referee so you can actually have a pinfall submission or over the top. And I always wanted to give them a pinfall. So a little closure, a little different. We were the alternative. And Kenny, there it is, as he's crowned the first NWA TNA champion. And so having Steamboat do it was a pretty cool moment personally for me, but from a business perspective, this is sort of the vision that you have a UFC star / Kenny could go and we are carrying on the lineage of that title that started in 1905.
And it's a quote unquote legitimate badass. The idea being, as silly as it sounds, once upon a time, people used to fantasy book stuff and they would say, what if this guy fought that guy for real? Now, I know that sounds silly, but that's what wrestling fans do, right? We're fight fans, or we pretend to be. So if this guy fought that guy, so I don't give a damn what promotion you got over in Japan or whatever's happening here in the WWF in June of 2002. Whoever it is, Ken Shamrock could probably kick the shit out of him. Just saying.
That's Kenny. And here, at this point, the legends were supposed to get up in the ring. Conrad, I don't know if we talked about it this night because it was getting late, but Dory and Harley and Bullet, see, they're outside the ring. They never got up in the ring to congratulate him. That was the story to be told. But again, first show, communication, lots of balls in the air. You're going to let some drop. But the story was that beauty shot of Kenny surrounded by the legends that were in the original in-ring. You follow me, Conrad?
Yes, sir. What do you think of the setup here, the shot with the announcers? Did you like it at ringside as opposed to?
Oh, sorry to cut you off, but no, the desk at ringside in the context. Yes, I thought, through the back, we've moved it away. And
It's Toby Keith. It's Toby Keith as well. Toby Keith. They got security holding Toby Keith back and Jackie Fargo.
So you got to have a tease for next week. So you got to show Toby Keith one more time just to set the stage, because at this point, Jeff, the hay is in the barn as far as getting their money this week. We got it, but now we got to convince them. You got to come out of pocket for $10 next week, right?
Exactly. And I could remember, can we just let the Kenny moment sink in? And had we not going the episodic nature of the following week, of course we would have. But there it is, the teaser of me and Toby and Scott Hall the following week. And early in the show, we did the lingerie battle royal. And, here I come out and I'm going to, complain about everything that I complained earlier. In essence, continue the episodic nature, which is the very core of our industry.
Man, I'll tell you, whoever was helping you cycle on and cycle off is doing a good job. You're in good shape here, bud.
That is that is that